Hi everyone, my name is Jean and I'm going to read you a book called Lights, Camera, and Murder by Kimberly Mullins for Itsy Bitsy Books. Chapter 1. The heron jumped from the out-of-control train, hitting the ground hard, and rolled away as it sped by. The audience gasped, waiting to see what adventure she would move on to next. The piano rang out, punctuating the movie's action. "Audience is full tonight," whispered Merle Cooper into her sister's ear. Jean kept playing the piano. "I know," she said, casting a furtive glance to her left. Her sister's gaze followed Jean's. "Well, well," Merle said, as she looked at the man who'd stand Jean's interest. "Hush, the movie's playing," Jean whispered, pulling her gaze from the tall, red-headed man. "The end is coming up." She watched the screen and gave the final scenes a loud clang on the piano. The audience clapped, and the film ran out. The lights came up, and the people started to move to the aisles that led to the small lobby of the theater. The man who held the two sisters' interest, Patrick Flannigan, sat with his sister Lottie and her girlfriend Elise. "Ready to go?" asked Elise. Lottie and Patrick nodded in affirmative. Their small group stood and walked with the crowds toward the lobby. Patrick stopped to study the theater entrance. Without turning, he said, "You can go ahead without me." Lottie looked at Patrick's retreating figure, then at Elise. Elise shrugged. Lottie had an idea of why he wanted to go back into the theater. He brought them to watch the same film multiple times over the past week. "Forget something in there?" He looked at her. "Yeah, I think I did." They watched as he headed back in. Elise walked up to Lottie. "Home?" Lottie placed her hat on her head and pinned it in its place. "Maybe stop at the tea room first," she suggested. Elise nodded, and they strolled hand in hand out of the lobby entrance onto the crowded streets. Patrick walked determinedly toward the theater. The curtain had been moved to cover the entrance. He pushed it aside and was surprised to see the movie running again, this time without sound. The piano player was up on the stage, acting out parts of the movie. Patrick watched the women mimic the actor's wide gestures and fear of the villain. When the actress went to jump off the train, the woman tucked her hair behind her ear and then jumped as well. He started forward in surprise to catch her. He needn't have worried. She somersaulted off the stage and landed on her feet almost directly in front of him. When she saw him, she jumped back and shouted, "Hey, you're not supposed to be here." Patrick silently studied her and answered, I came back for something." "What?" she asked suspiciously and tapped her foot on the wood floor. The sound could be heard echoing through the empty room. He moved past her to his seat and picked up his hat. He flipped it in his hand, and it landed on his head in one neat move. She nodded. "Cute. Now that you have it, you can leave." He walked toward the entrance. He stopped at the curtain and turned toward her. "How did you do that?" "What?" "That jump from the stage. Isn't it dangerous?" "It can be," she admitted, "but I know what I'm doing." "How?" he started when a voice interrupted him. "Jean, Jean!" "In here, Merle," the woman in front of him called out. The woman appeared in the doorway. Patrick's eyes widened. The woman had light blonde hair that fell in short waves to her neck. Her dress was silver and much shorter than most women wore. He couldn't help but to stare at her. Jean and Merle were used to the attention Merle attracted. They both ignored him. "Are you headed out?" Jean asked her sister. "Yeah, the party started. Want to come?" This was a familiar question, and Jean answered as she always did. "No, I don't think so. Don't stay out too late. I'll lock the door behind me." "Don't wait up," Merle admonished, her wrap dropping off her shoulder and revealing her arm. Patrick frowned when he saw the scar he saw there. "Bye." Merle adjusted her wrap to cover her arm. She noticed his attention, smiled broadly, and winked at him before she turned and sauntered off. Jean just shook her head and watched her leave. Once the curtain fell back, she turned to Patrick. The movie continued to play behind her, illuminating her figure. "On your way now," she said to Patrick, waving him away. Instead of moving, he asked, "Needing help cleaning up?" She tilted her head at him. Know how to use a broom? I think I can manage it. Jean went to the small room beside the stage and reappeared with 2 brooms. She tossed one at him, which he caught deftly. Start at the front and work your way to the back, she directed. They began sweeping, and the room was completed in short order. What's your name? She asked as she took the broom from him and returned them to the closet. Patrick Flannigan. She turned back to him. Thanks for helping, Patrick. I'm Jean Cooper. It's nice to meet you. They stared at each other for a long moment. She pulled her eyes away from him and walked toward the lobby, Patrick following her. She walked to the small ticket booth and got her jacket. They walked out and she turned to lock the door behind them. The sidewalk was empty. The crowd that had been at the movie had moved on to other destinations. Would you like to go for a walk? He asked. I think I would. Which way? Patrick didn't mention he had a car. He wanted to spend as much time with Jean as possible. I live that way, she said, pointing to her right. He nodded and they started toward her home. Jean cast a glance toward him. So what do you do, Patrick? I'm a policeman. I moved here this year from Chicago. Was that your girlfriend you were sitting with earlier? Jean asked bluntly. He smiled at that. You noticed me? She stayed silent, and he couldn't read her expression in the limited light. It was my sister and her girlfriend, he sputtered. What about you? She understood the question. I'm not seeing anyone. He mulled that over as they continued to walk. She stopped suddenly in front of an apartment building. This is my home. She turned to go into the building. He put out his hand to stop her. Jean, would you like to go out with me sometime? I would, she answered. There's a phone in the hallway. She pulled out a pencil and paper, scribbling on it before handing it to him. Or you can reach me at the theater at after 3 p.m. each day. I'll see you soon, he promised. Jean nodded and smiled slightly. I'm looking forward to it. She entered and turned back to wave. He was still there and nodded toward her. He turned and walked away. She shook her head and walked up to the stairs to her and Merle's apartment. It was located on the 5th floor, and she was careful not to step too hard. In the past, she'd run up the stairs for exercise and had gotten yelled at on all 5 of the floors. At her door, she put in the key in the lock and opened it. The lights were on, and the room was brightly lit. Why are the lights on? She muttered as she pulled off her sweater. At that moment, her sister sauntered out of the bathroom in her nightgown. That's why. You're home early, Jean remarked as she folded up her sweater. The party was boring, Merle said, playing with the ribbon that was wrapped around her short hair. That's probably a good thing. You never seem to get enough rest. Merle dropped the ribbon and put her hands on her hips. Jean, what did that mean? What did that man want tonight? What man? Jean asked coyly. That large, good-looking redhead, her sister said in exasperation. Oh, that man, Jean replied dryly. Jean, Merle said threateningly, raising her fist. Jean held up her hands. Hey now, there's no need for violence. He was just a nice man who walked me home. Why? Merle asked, dropping her fist to her side. Why? He just wanted to walk me home. Yeah, I know that. What did he talk about? Instead of answering, Jean asked, How about you tell me why you're asking about him? Merle dropped her hand from her hips and walked to the couch. She dropped down and put a pillow over her face. She lowered it and said, Jean, he's a copper. I know, Jean said, and sat in a chair in front of the couch. You know? Yeah, he told me. How did you know? I recognized the woman with him, Lottie Flannigan. She was involved in that Becker mess. I mentioned her and a tall redhead to a man at the party. He said he's seen him around her before and that he's a copper. She laid her head back. Did he mention me? Jean frowned. Why would that be? Her sister glared at her and she responded, The answer is no. Then what did you talk about? Merle asked, leaning towards her. There's other topics than you. We just talked about normal things. Good, maybe that's the extent of it, Merle said, and moved the pillow to the end of the couch and laid down. Until tomorrow. Merle sat up quickly, holding her head. The ups and downs were making her dizzy. What's this about tomorrow? He wants to see me again. Why? Jean sighed. Merle, I know you're the pretty one, but occasionally men do like to talk to me. Merle grimaced. Fool myself, aren't I? Just a little bit, Jean grinned, holding her hand with her thumb and finger a small distance apart. Anyway, I think he just wants to get to know me. Merle was still dubious. You'll let me know if he starts asking questions about me? You have my word. Thank you for listening.